Welcome to the Bookistrator, where I share the stories I love through illustration. Today I'll be sharing another Mermaid Short Story video. For more context, go and watch the first one I did in what is becoming a series. It'll be linked here in the video and in the description below. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with this format and idea, or if you just need a refresher, here's the plan for today. I participate in a yearly art challenge on Instagram every year called Mermaid. During the month, an official prompt list is put out by the creators and thousands of people follow along, doing a mermaid illustration every day for the month of May. I absolutely do not have time to do a prompt a day, so I tend to only do 1 to 3 illustrations during the challenge. It's so fun to see what other people come up with, using the same prompts as everyone else. I still want to keep up my tradition of doing a mermaid illustration every May, but ever since I started working on this channel in 2023, I decided to record the process. This wasn't with the intent to make a video about it, but rather to help me figure out better ways to paint hair, as I was struggling with that at the time. In doing that though, I decided I wanted to make it a video after all, and wrote a short story to go along with it. I'm really digging into my two passions, art and creative writing, with these videos, which I'm glad you guys will indulge me in doing. This footage you'll be seeing in a moment here is the mermaid I drew for Mermaid 2025. The only thought I had as I started working on the piece was make something cool. So the story I wrote that you'll be hearing me read in a moment was all created afterwards. I'm pretty proud of it though. I wanted to go in a more fairy tale inspired direction with this story, like something you'd find in a Grimm's Brothers collection or written by Hans Christian Andersen or Charles Perrault. Hopefully, you can hear what I mean as you listen, and I certainly hope you enjoy. Selene was born from 2 lesser gods, Museo, the god of a hummed song, and Idea, the goddess of lapping waves. She was raised in the sea with her mother, as she had been born a merfolk. Here she could race the dolphins, streaking far ahead with her long and sinuous tail. As a young godling, no one knew what she would someday be goddess of. Maybe the laughter that comes with a race won, maybe the sparkle of water sprayed in the sunlight. Her parents loved their happy child and couldn't wait to see what she would become. As a young maid, she was sent to live with her new husband, Hector, a mortal king of great renown. Her parents hoped the match would teach her many things, while also bringing more demi-godlings into the world. And finally, when her mortal husband grew old and died, she could return to the sea. Selene traveled 11 days to her new home, swimming up the rivers and streams. Her attendants followed, laden with baskets made of rushes from the river banks, skillfully woven with their deft fingers. Each basket was filled with precious shells and pearls, dried fish delicacies, and preserved sea stars. Abalone combs and strings of gems mined only on the ocean floor sat beside a sword made of pure narwhal horn, all gifts for Selene's new husband. During the journey, Selene was delighted by the forests they passed. She loved to see the animals. They were so different from the creatures of her youth. Large bears raked trees to sharpen their claws, wolves howled in their packs at night, and birds trilled high above, reminding her of her father's sweet songs. But one of her attendants, an old fishwoman, told her to look closer. The bear who was so majestic was thin with patchy fur. The wolves in the night howled in fear as they searched for food. The birds were few in numbers, their young dying early. "Why do the animals struggle? Is my husband a bad king?" she asked. "They have not the water to sustain themselves. This area of the world is dry and barren with frequent droughts." Selene kept this knowledge close to her heart as they continued on their way. Her new husband's home was high in the mountains, and for the last leg of the journey, Selene and her company were pulled along in carriages. Her attendants kept her from drying out by applying wet cloths to her skin, but she was still left gasping from the lack of water. The palace of her new home was grand, made of fine gray blocks of stone and high towers that reminded her of the soaring reefs of coral in her mother's domain. 24 servants from the palace carried her inside, each with an arm carefully holding the lengths of her tail. The men balked at her appearance, but she kept her fear and unease to herself. Her fish maids directed her bridal gifts as they made their way up the stairs and into her new life. She was placed in a silver tub with clawed feet, her tail hanging out and trailing around the room. As she soaked, she was plied with perfumes and jewelry, and her hair was combed and braided and pressed with oils. They pulled her from the water to dress her in purples and blues, fine fabrics that wrapped around her torso and dangled in delicate ribbons that reminded them all of waves. Bangles of gold and silver were placed around her wrists and on the shortest coil of her tail. Her ears were pierced, as was custom on a woman's wedding day. 2 drops of golden blood fell to the floor, and Celine watched as an attendant knelt to clean them up. Outside, rain began to fall. Everyone in the room stopped and looked on in surprise. "A good omen," they said, delighted. "Maybe this princess of the sea will bring us the water we so desperately need." Blue crystals were dangled from her ears, just like the drops of rain. Ready now for the wedding ceremony, the men carried Celine to the throne room. Standing at the front of the altar was a man a few years her senior. His hair was short and dark, his features fine and his eyes bright, his skin a rich brown. He was similarly dressed in robes of purple and blue, with his own ears pierced through. Celine was set on a throne of wood and stone, her tail trailing down the aisle, dark and long. King Hector bowed gently to her, a smile on his face. She in turn smiled at him, her head held high as a goddess should. They shared a cup of wine and were both anointed in a thin, fragrant oil. Last, they exchanged rings. Celine gave her king a ring made from whalebone, with a center of deep amethyst. Hector placed a ring of delicate silver lit with a fiery red ruby at its core on her finger. There was much feasting and rejoicing after the ceremony. Fine wines were drunk, beasts of every kind were eaten, and all of the people danced in the rain that poured for 3 days. After the exchange of gifts, Hector led his new wife to the back courtyard of the palace. Here he had built a pool made of stone, dug into the earth, where his queen could soak. Thankful for the gift, she placed a sweet hand on his face and allowed her attendants to place her in the pool. As the months passed, maids often asked the new queen if she was pregnant, but no child had come yet. Then a year came and went. There was still no air and no rain. Celine could see that the people were worried, could see that her husband was worried. And while she could not make a child appear, she could perhaps do something for the drought. She took a delicate dagger, one given to her on her wedding day, and made a careful cut through the skin of her forearm. The golden blood trickled down, welling at the feet of a shocked maid. The rain began only moments later. Bells were rung in joy as the people began to cheer. For the following 2 years, Celine continued her ritual. Each month she would make a small cut, on her arms, on her tail, on her shoulders, her palms. Each time the waters would come and the people would rejoice, and each time she would gain a pale, new scar. Celine liked to spend her time in her pool, feeling the rain from above kiss her face sweetly as she soaked. Hector would come and sit by the side and tell her stories of his childhood. One night as they sat there, she told her husband that it was her blood that was easing the drought. He knelt beside her and begged her to stop, for he had come to love her very much. As his wife, she touched his cheek gently and thanked him. But as the great queen of this land, she declined. "If my blood can save the animals of the woods and the people in the streets," she said, "then it is worth a little cut now and again." King Hector kissed the scars on her hands. But not all was right in the kingdom. People had begun whispering about their queen's ability to bring the rain. The maids had even let slip that it was through the queen's blood that the storms came. A group of men met one evening in the forest to discuss what was to be done. If they killed the queen and drained all of her blood, surely the land would remain fertile forever. A week passed, and on the night of the new moon, a mob broke into the palace. Never had they needed a wall or gate before, but on this night that folly was to be the royal line's end. Guards and attendants were cast aside, and either captured or killed. Celine was in her pool, horrified by the sounds around her and unable to search for the source. Her attendants had fled, but then Hector arrived and sword in hand guarded her. She held his hand for a moment, a delicate touch, before the shouting began. The mom broke into the crowd, torches aloft, knives at the ready. King Hector stood tall and bellowed his rage at the people. "Do you not see that your queen is a godly gift to this land? She has saved us all, and now you'll kill her? What gratitude!" A man stepped forward from the assembly. Daisenor was his name. He pointed a sword at the queen, saying, "Her blood brings the rain. If we spill every drop, we will never know drought again." King Hector lunged with his sword. He felled several men before he too was thrust to the ground. Celine screamed at the sight, long scarred fingers to her mouth. The men pressed in, circling her. One threw the body of the king atop her, laughing as she cried out. She cradled his head to her chest. She wept, eyes fierce as she beheld the twisted faces around her. Before a single axe could chop or a knife blade pierce, she spoke, with words dark and loud. "I curse you all. I am a goddess and your queen, and I curse you and this land that you hold dear. You will never know drought again." The men looked at each other, puzzled. She took a dagger from her love's belt and slashed the corner of her mouth, the golden blood dripping onto her tongue as she said, "You will never know drought, for you will never be dry." With her words, the rain gushed from the sky and began to fill the courtyard. It swept away the blood of the king and sunk into the mouths and eyes of the men who killed him. It filled the palace and flooded the streets. It broke and crushed and swept through the houses until nothing was left dry. When Celine returned to her mother's home in the sea, she brought the rain with her. But this time, it was red, dyeing the land below as she swam. It tinged the waters of the sea itself, and the merfolk and fish alike looked on in fear as Celine entered the water. Her tail swished back and forth, her hair billowing out and above, her eyes as crimson as the droplets dangling from her ears. Golden blood sparked around her. Her mother, Tidea, arrived in the throng of onlookers. She swam forward and beheld her daughter, beautiful and terrible. "My child, do you know what you are the goddess of?" she asked, fear and wonder in her countenance. "Yes, mother," Celine replied. She held up her hand, and around the finger where her wedding ring should be was a white circle. "I am the goddess of scars." I hope you guys like this new mermaid story and illustration. I really enjoyed both aspects of creating for this video and hope you are all ready for another one like this in May. With that illustration, I'll be caught up to the current year, so I'll only be making these once every May from here on. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day or night. Bye!